The cave smelled of copper and cordite. Staff Sergeant Sarah Keane lay in absolute darkness, her left shoulder blooming wet and warm where shrapnel had torn through Kevlar and muscle. The radio at her hip crackled static, useless, smashed during the blast that had turned her overwatch position into a kill box. Her right hand still gripped the M24, knuckles white around walnut and steel. Her left hand pressed against something else. A notebook, leather cover slick with blood, pages swollen from moisture and time. Even now, even bleeding in the Hindu Kush with Taliban fighters somewhere in the blackness above, she held onto it like a lifeline. Footsteps echoed from deeper in the tunnel system, multiple contacts, moving slow, searching. Sarah's lips moved in the dark, forming words no one could hear. "You were right, Marcus. Fear is a weapon, and I'm about to use yours." She lifted the rifle, not to her shoulder, not to her eye, just raised it toward the sound, toward the nothing, and fired blind into the mountain's throat. The muzzle flash lit the cave for half a heartbeat, long enough to see three faces, frozen in surprise, long enough to see that she'd guessed right about the distance, long enough to watch the first man fall. Then darkness swallowed everything again, and the mountain began to scream. 72 hours earlier, the war had looked different. Combat Outpost Vanguard squatted in the Kunar Valley like a fist of sandbags and concertina wire, daring the mountains to take a swing. Inside the Plywood Operations Center, 14 soldiers sat in folding chairs that had seen better deployments. The air conditioning rattled like dice in a cup. Outside, August heat turned the valley into a kiln. Staff Sergeant Sarah Keane sat in the back row, 28 years old, 5'9". Lean the way distance runners get lean, all compact muscle and efficient movement. Her eyes held the pale clarity of winter sky, almost colorless in certain light. The kind of eyes that looked through problems instead of at them. She'd been in country 4 months, long enough to know the smell of burn pits and understand the particular quality of silence that came before an ambush. Not long enough to stop checking the locks on her rifle case 3 times before sleep. Captain Owen Brennan stood at the front of the room beside a projection screen, his uniform still holding creases despite the heat. 42 years old, West Point ring catching light when he moved his hands. The kind of officer who followed regulations the way other men followed religion. The projector hummed. An image appeared. Satellite footage of a ridge line, elevation markers in white text. Observation Post Titan. A small fortification perched at 9,000 feet, overlooking 3 valleys where Taliban moved like smoke through the villages. Brennan's voice carried the flat professionalism of a man who'd given too many briefings about dead soldiers. "Gentlemen and Sergeant Keane, 36 hours ago, Afghan National Army lost contact with Op Titan. 8 men stationed there. No distress call, no radio traffic, no firefight." He clicked to the next image. When the quick reaction force arrived, they found this. The room went quiet. 8 bodies. ANA soldiers in their chocolate chip fatigues arranged almost peacefully in the dirt. Each man bore a single wound, head or heart, surgical precision. Their weapons lay beside them, magazines still loaded, safety still engaged. No brass casings anywhere in sight. Sergeant First Class Cole Mitchell, a big man with Ranger scroll and too many deployments, leaned forward in his chair. "Sir, this looks like execution style, close range." Brennan shook his head. "Negative. Forensics puts the shooter at 800 meters minimum. Elevated position, single shooter, no follow-up shots needed." Someone in the front row whistled low. "That's not Taliban, sir. That's professional." Brennan clicked again. The next image showed a close-up of brass, a single shell casing, larger than standard NATO rounds. Cyrillic markings stamped into the base. 7.62 by 54R Soviet-era ammunition. ANA Intel believes this is the same operator responsible for 11 coalition deaths in the past 3 months. No pattern to the targets, no political message, just killing. They've given him a code name. He paused, and in that pause Sarah felt something cold move through her chest. The Wraith. Mitchell snorted. Wraith sounds like campfire bullshit. Brennan dropped a clear evidence bag onto the table in front of him. The casing clattered inside the plastic. Mitchell picked it up, held it to the light. Ghosts don't leave calling cards, Sergeant. Sarah watched from the back row as Mitchell rotated the casing, squinted. His expression changed. There's something scratched into the brass. Numbers maybe, can't make it out. Brennan's eyes found Sarah across the room, those pale eyes that seemed to catch and hold light strangely. Sergeant Keane, you read Cyrillic. Every head turned. Sarah felt the weight of attention like a hand on her shoulder. Some sir. Bring it here. She rose, moved to the front, took the evidence bag from Mitchell's thick fingers. The casing was warm from his grip. She held it up, angled it under the fluorescent lights until the scratches caught shadow. Tiny marks, deliberate, carved with a knife tip or a nail. Not Cyrillic, sir. Arabic numerals, 1 and 5. 15. That's correct. What's 15 mean? I don't know, sir. The room waited. Sarah handed back the evidence bag and returned to her seat, feeling eyes track her movement. Questions forming behind those stares. Questions she couldn't answer because she didn't know the answers herself. Not yet. Brennan continued. We're green lighting a counter-sniper operation. Volunteer basis. 2-person team. Helicopter insertion at 0400 day after tomorrow. Objective is locate and eliminate the target before he hits another position. I need shooters who can think like this guy, who can predict him. 4 hands went up. Mitchell, 2 others from 10th Mountain, a kid from Florida with a combat infantry badge and 3 pumps to Iraq. Sarah didn't raise her hand. She just nodded once when Brennan looked at her. Sergeant Keane, you'll take Corporal Jessica Chen as your spotter. The rest of you dismissed. Chairs scraped. Soldiers filed out into the heat, talking low among themselves. Sarah stayed seated. So did Brennan. When the room emptied, he pulled a second chair close and sat. Your personnel file says you trained civilian. No formal sniper school. No military instructor on record. Just civilian marksmanship and a note that you qualified expert on your first try. Sarah said nothing. Who taught you to shoot, Sergeant? My stepfather. Name. Does it matter? He's dead. Brennan studied her face the way a man studies a map before walking into unknown country. Those eyes of hers gave away nothing, flat and unreflective as brushed steel. For your sake, I hope that's true. He stood, walked to the door, stopped with his hand on the frame. One more thing, Chen's good, smart, but she asks questions. If she asks you something you don't want to answer, remember that she reports to me. Understand? Yes, sir. He left. Sarah sat alone in the empty briefing room, listening to the air conditioner rattle. On the projection screen, the image of Op Titan still glowed. 8 dead men, 1 shooter, 15 scratched into brass. She pulled her phone from her cargo pocket. No signal this deep in the valley, but she didn't need signal, just the photo gallery. She scrolled to an image she'd taken 6 months ago before deployment. A page from a notebook. Handwritten text, faded ink. Rule number 7. Every enemy leaves a signature. a pattern in how they move, how they choose ground, how they time their shots. You can't see it by looking at one kill. You need the whole picture. Map the system beneath the chaos. She stared at that page for a long time. Then she stood and walked to the armory. The weapons cage smelled like CLP and old canvas. Sarah signed out her rifle, a custom M24 that had cost her 3 months of pay, and a favor from a gunsmith in Montana. The Army issued M2010s now, newer and longer range, but Sarah had grown up with the M24, knew its weight and balance the way a musician knows an instrument. She carried it to an empty corner of the supply tent and set it on a folding table under a bare bulb. Field stripped it without looking. Bolt, trigger assembly, stock, each piece laid out in order, ritual and meditation combined. The stock was walnut, dark with age and oil from 1,000 handlings. She unscrewed the butt plate. Inside the hollow cavity, wrapped in a Ziploc bag, was the notebook. 5 inches by 7, leather cover worn soft as cloth, 160 pages of cramped handwriting, some entries dated, most not, diagrams of wind patterns and elevation charts, notes on ballistics and breathing techniques, observations about fear and patience and the mathematics of death. On the inside cover, 2 initials, MH. No name. Marcus had been careful about that. Even in death, even in the private pages of a journal meant only for himself, he'd left no clear trail. Sarah opened to the first page. Rule number 1. A sniper's greatest weapon isn't the rifle, it's patience. The amateur rushes, the professional waits. The master knows the difference between waiting and wasting time. Rule number 2. Fear the enemy who doesn't shoot. He's planning something worse. Rule number 3. If you're reading this, I'm gone. Finish what I started. No signature. She'd found the notebook 13 years ago, the day after Marcus Hale's funeral. Hidden in the gun safe in their Montana cabin, tucked behind his old M24 and a box of hand-loaded ammunition. Her mother, dead herself now from cancer, had said nothing about it. Just handed Sarah the safe combination on a slip of paper and walked away. Sarah had been 15, old enough to understand that the man who'd taught her to shoot, who'd taken her into the mountains every weekend, who'd showed her how to read wind in the bend of grass and judge distance by the shape of shadows, had not been just a stepfather, had been something else, something the Army didn't talk about. The funeral had been closed casket. Heart attack, they said, sudden, tragic. But when Sarah tried to find his service records at 18, thinking about enlisting herself, she'd hit a wall, classified, sealed, no access. She'd stopped asking questions after that. But she'd kept the notebook. Now she turned to page 47, the entry she'd thought about during Brennan's briefing. Advanced technique. Use terrain as ricochet. Wind carries rounds farther than most shooters believe. Thermal updrafts in mountain valleys can add 30 feet of vertical carry. Map the thermals. Fire into them. Let physics do the work. This isn't marksmanship. This is poetry. Below that, a diagram. A ridge. A valley. A dotted line showing a round fired at a sharp upward angle, caught by rising air, carried through a natural chimney in the rock, then falling onto a target above the shooter. Exactly the shot that had killed 8 men at Op Titan. Sarah closed the notebook, wrapped it carefully, returned it to the rifle stock and reassembled the weapon. Someone had read Marcus's notes. Someone had learned his techniques. Someone was out in these mountains, killing with a method that Sarah recognized like her own reflection. The question was whether that someone had learned from Marcus directly, or learned from someone Marcus had trained. The question was whether Marcus Hale, dead 13 years in a closed coffin, had actually died at all. She pushed the thought away. Conspiracy thinking, the kind of mental trap that got soldiers killed. But the thought pushed back. And in the quiet of the supply tent, surrounded by the smell of gun oil and canvas, Sarah Keane made a decision. She would find the Wraith. She would learn who he was. And if the trail led somewhere she didn't want to go, she would follow it anyway. Because Marcus had taught her that too. Rule number 18. Never turn away from the truth, even when the truth wears the face of someone you love. Corporal Jessica Chen found Sarah on the firing range 2 hours before sunset. The range was a scrape of bulldozed earth and berms, 100 meters of flat ground with paper targets at 400, 600, and 800 yards. Sarah stood at the line with the M24, no scope mounted, using only iron sights. She fired, waited, fired again, 3 rounds, smooth and mechanical. A private ran the targets back on a cable system. Chen arrived in time to see them. 3 holes, all center mass, all at 600 yards, all shot without magnification. Chen was 24, Chinese-American, born in Sacramento, degree in computer engineering from UC Davis before she'd enlisted. Smart enough to get a civilian job making 6 figures, but she'd wanted to serve. Wanted to prove something, though Sarah had never asked what. She wore glasses with black plastic frames, kept her hair in a regulation bun tight enough to give headaches, carried a tablet computer in a ballistic case like it was a part of her body. How did you do that? Sarah ejected the magazine, cleared the chamber, set the rifle on the bench. Do what? 600 yards, iron sights, 3 perfect shots. Breathing, you breathe with the trigger pull, not against it. Chen stepped closer, studying Sarah's face the way someone studies a puzzle. Those pale eyes gave nothing away. I read your file. Civilian trained, no formal school, top qualifications on every range test, but no instructor listed, just says stepfather, name redacted. Sarah picked up the rifle, walked toward the target storage. Chen followed. Why is his name redacted? Classified, probably. You don't know. Sarah stopped, turned. Corporal, we insert in 36 hours. I need to know if you can do this job. If you can spot, range, call wind, and keep up in terrain that'll break your ankles if you're not careful. I don't need to know your life story, and you don't need to know mine. Clear. Chen adjusted her glasses. Something in her expression hardened. Crystal, Sergeant. Good, meet me at the briefing tent at 2100. Bring terrain maps and thermal overlays for the past 6 weeks. I want to see every heat signature within 10 clicks of Op Titan. You think Wraith is still in the area? I think he's patient, and patient shooters don't run after a kill. They observe, they learn, they plan the next one. How do you know that? Because that's what I do. Sarah walked away, leaving Chen standing in the dust with questions written on her face. At 2100 hours, Chen arrived at the briefing tent with her tablet and a surprised expression. I found something weird. Sarah looked up from the satellite map spread across the plywood table. 5 different elevations, 12 valleys, 40 potential sniper hides marked in red. Show me. Chen set the tablet down, swiped through thermal images. Okay, so I pulled 6 weeks of drone footage. Thermals, infrared, standard optical. Ran them through pattern recognition software, looking for human-sized heat signatures in elevated positions during the time frame of each coalition KIA. And I found nothing. No thermal blooms, no signatures. It's like the guy doesn't generate heat. Sarah leaned closer. In the dim light of the tent, her eyes looked almost silver. Unless he's shooting from a position that masks his thermal signature, underground, deep shadow, somewhere the ambient temperature matches body temperature. Chen zoomed in on the image from the day Op Titan was hit. That's the thing, I checked the terrain around Titan. No caves, no tunnels, solid granite ridge. Show me the wind data from that day. Chen pulled it up. Sarah studied the numbers, wind speed, direction, temperature gradient between valley floor and ridge top. She cross-referenced with the topographic map, traced a line with her finger from a point 200 meters below Op Titan, up through a narrow fissure in the rock, to the base itself. He wasn't on the ridge, she said quietly. He was in a thermal vent, a natural chimney, fired up through it. Wind carried the round. Chen stared. That's impossible. You can't calculate that kind of shot, too many variables. You can if you've practiced it, if you've mapped the thermals, if you know the terrain well enough to predict air movement. Who thinks like that? Sarah didn't answer. She turned to the notebook, lying open on the table to page 47, the diagram of the exact technique. Chen looked at the page, looked at Sarah. Where did you get that? From someone who thought like that. Your stepfather. Sarah closed the notebook. We need to focus. If Wraith used that technique at Titan, he'll use variations of it elsewhere. We need to find other locations with similar thermal profiles. Vents, chimneys, anywhere he can shoot from below and use rising air to carry the round. Chen was quiet for a long moment. Then she pulled up a geological survey map. There are 14 locations within 20 clicks that match that profile. If we cross-reference with recent coalition movements and convoy schedules. She worked in silence, fingers moving across the screen. Sarah watched, waited. 3 minutes later, Chen looked up. 2 locations, both overlook scheduled patrol routes, one tomorrow, one the day after. Which one has better egress routes? Chen zoomed in, studied the terrain. First location, multiple gullies, cave system to the east, good concealment. Then that's where he'll be. How do you know? Because Marcus taught me. Because I've read these notes 100 times. Because I can predict this man the way I predict weather. Because somewhere in the back of Sarah's mind, a cold suspicion was growing that the Wraith wasn't just using Marcus's techniques. The Wraith might be someone Marcus had trained directly. Or something worse. But she kept that thought to herself. Chen, we need to get to that location 12 hours before the patrol. Set up. Wait for him. That's not the mission. Brennan said we insert near Op Titan. Brennan doesn't understand how this shooter thinks. Trust me. Or don't. But I'm going to that location with or without you. Chen studied Sarah's face. Whatever she saw there made her decision. I'm in, but if Brennan asks, this was your call. It was. They worked until midnight, mapping ingress routes and fallback positions. When Chen finally left, Sarah sat alone with the maps and the notebook. She opened to page 94, an entry she'd read so many times the ink had started to fade from the oil on her fingers. The hardest part of this life isn't the killing, it's the waiting, the long hours in the hide alone with your thoughts. Your mind starts playing tricks, tells you you're wasting time, tells you the enemy is smarter, tells you to give up and move. That voice is poison. Doubt is the sniper's worst enemy, not the counter-sniper, not bad intelligence, doubt. When doubt comes, and it will come, remember this. You prepared, you trained, you mapped the ground, you know what the enemy doesn't know. You exist and he doesn't know you're there. That advantage is everything. Trust your preparation, trust your skill, trust that when the moment comes, you'll recognize it. And when you pull that trigger, there is no hesitation, no second guessing, just the smooth press, the recoil, the target falling. Fire and vanish. That's the only rule that matters. Sarah read those words 3 times. Then she went to her tent, set an alarm for 0300, and forced herself to sleep. The Blackhawk helicopter cut through darkness, rotors beating the thin mountain air. Sarah sat across from Chen, and a 4-man security team led by Staff Sergeant Wade Cooper, a thick-shouldered ranger with 3 deployments and eyes that had seen too much. Cooper shouted over the engine noise. LZ is contested. Taliban own these valleys after sunset. We'll be on deck 90 seconds max. Get off, get moving, get to ground. Sarah checked her rifle, magazine seated, round chambered, safety on. Chen leaned close. You good? Always. The pilot's voice crackled through the headsets. 30 seconds to LZ. The helicopter banked. Sarah's stomach dropped. Through the open door, she could see nothing but darkness and the faint outline of ridges against stars. 20 seconds. Chen's hand gripped the bench seat, knuckles white. 10 seconds. Alarm screamed through the cabin, high-pitched, electronic. The pilot's voice urgent now. Missile lock deploying flares. The helicopter pitched hard right. Sarah's body slammed against the safety harness. Through the door, she saw white phosphorus flares tumbling through the night like dying stars. Then the sky erupted. An explosion close enough to rock the aircraft. Shrapnel pinged off the hull. The helicopter dropped, pilot fighting for control. Cooper's voice cut through the chaos. We're compromised. Abort, abort. Negative, the pilot shouted back. Can't turn in this canyon, going down to deck. The helicopter dove. Sarah's stomach climbed into her throat. The altimeter spun down, 200 feet, 150. Sarah grabbed Chen's shoulder, squeezed hard. On my mark, we jump. Don't wait for the skids to touch. Chen's eyes went wide behind her glasses. That's insane. It's the only way we don't get shot sitting here, trust me. The ground rushed up, 30 feet, 20. The helicopter still moving forward at 40 knots. Sarah unclipped her harness. Mark. She jumped. Hit the ground rolling the way Marcus had taught her when she was 13. Shoulder, hip, legs tucking. Momentum carrying her through the impact. She came up in a crouch, rifle already tracking, scanning the darkness. Chen hit beside her, rolled badly, cried out. Sarah grabbed her, dragged her into a shallow depression as the helicopter lifted away, turbines screaming, taking fire from somewhere in the rocks. Cooper and his team were still aboard. The aircraft banked hard, disappearing into the night. Then silence, just wind and the ringing in Sarah's ears. Chen lay beside her, breathing hard. Are you hurt? Chen tested her ankle, winced. Twisted, not broken. Can you walk? I can hobble. Sarah pulled out her compass. The helicopter had dropped them 3 clicks short of their planned insertion point. 5 clicks from the target location. No backup, no extraction. Chen sat up, looking at the empty sky where the helicopter had vanished. What do we do? Sarah shouldered her pack. We finish the mission. How? We're alone. We're always alone, Corporal. The only question is whether we panic or move. Chen stared at her. You've said that before. No, I haven't. Someone has. I recognized the phrasing. Sarah didn't respond. She just pointed to a ridge 2 clicks north. Thermal updrafts from that valley create wind shear at the ridge line. Any thermal optics will refract wrong. We stay low in the thermals. We're invisible. How do you know that? I read ahead. She started walking. After a moment, Chen followed. They moved through darkness for 2 hours, navigating by compass and the shape of stars against ridgelines. Chen's ankle slowed them, but she didn't complain, just gritted her teeth and kept pace. 20 minutes before dawn, they froze. Voices, male, speaking Pashto, 50 meters ahead and closing. Sarah dropped flat. Chen followed. They lay in a dry streambed, hardly breathing, as 5 Taliban fighters walked past on a goat trail. AK-47s, Chinese flashlights sweeping the rocks. One man stopped, sniffed the air, said something to the others. Sarah's hand moved to her knife, slow, silent. The fighter raised his rifle, aimed toward the streambed, took 2 steps forward. His radio squawked. He answered, voice irritated, listened, then turned and walked away with the group. When the footsteps faded, Chen exhaled. He smelled us. Sarah put the knife away. No, he smelled fear. High cortisol changes your sweat. Animals smell it. Experienced hunters smell it. Control the fear or it controls you. How do you control fear? You don't, you use it. Fear sharpens the senses, makes you faster. You just can't let it make you stupid. Who taught you that? The same person who taught me everything else. They reached the target location 40 minutes before sunrise, a natural rock formation on a ridge at 7,800 feet, perfect defilade, overlooking 2 valleys and 3 approach routes, exactly where Sarah knew it would be. They set up the hide. Sarah ranged landmarks, 600 meters to a boulder, 850 to a dead tree, 1,100 to the far ridge. Chen unpacked the spotting scope and thermal imager. Thermals showing nothing. If Wraith is here, he's buried deep. He's here. How do you know? Because that's where I'd be. Sarah pointed to a rock formation 900 meters across the valley, slightly elevated, natural concealment, clear sightlines to 3 routes, 2 egress paths behind it. Chen glassed it through the spotting scope. I don't see anything. You won't, not yet, but when the patrol comes through, he'll shift position. That's when we'll see him. What if you're wrong? Then we wait. Patience is the weapon. Chen settled in behind the scope. Sarah opened the notebook to page 89. She read silently, but in her mind she heard Marcus's voice. Psychology of the counter-sniper duel. The hunter becomes hunted. The trap becomes the escape. Never set up where the enemy expects. Set up where the enemy would set up if he were you. Then wait for him to arrive at your first choice position. When he does, you'll already be watching. Below the text, a diagram, the exact ridge they were on, drawn 15 years ago. Chen saw it. Her voice went quiet. Sarah, that's our position. This position right here. I know. How did your stepfather predict we'd be here? He didn't predict we'd be here. He predicted the enemy would force us here. Chen's expression shifted, understanding, then fear. You're saying Wraith wanted us here? No, I'm saying whoever wrote this notebook wanted Wraith here, and we're the bait. Before Chen could respond, the radio crackled, static, then a voice. Male, Russian accent, calm as a man ordering coffee. Hello, Sarah, you read his notes well. Did you find page 12 yet? Sarah's blood turned to ice. She flipped to page 12, a page she'd never paid much attention to before. simple breathing exercises, technical notes. But now she looked closer. In the margin, faint pencil marks, almost invisible unless you knew to look. A date, a grid coordinate, a single word in Cyrillic. Volkov. The radio crackled again. You see it now, yes. Your stepfather knew I would come, just as he knew you would be here to meet me. Chen grabbed the radio. Who is this? No answer. Then the sound, supersonic crack, a bullet passing overhead so close Sarah felt the pressure wave. The round hit rock 6 inches from her head. Fragments stung her cheek. Chen screamed. Sarah didn't. She dropped flat, scanned for muzzle flash. Nothing. Second round, hit Chen's spotting scope. Glass and metal exploded. Third round, impacted between them, dead center, warning shot. The radio crackled again. You have questions, I have answers, but first you run. 57 seconds left. Sarah grabbed Chen. Move now. They rolled down the backside of the ridge, sliding on loose scree, tumbling into a ravine. A fourth round hit exactly where Sarah's head had been 2 seconds earlier. They landed hard in dead ground, covered by the ridge, safe for the moment. Chen's hands shook, her glasses were cracked. The radio, still clipped to Sarah's vest, spoke again. Good, rule number 1. Survive first, think second. Your stepfather taught you that, yes. Sarah keyed the mic, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Who are you? I am the man who knows Marcus Hale is not dead, and now, so do you. The radio went silent. Chen stared at Sarah. Marcus Hale, who the hell is that? Sarah looked at the notebook in her hands, at the pencil marks on page 12 that she'd never noticed before, at the impossible fact that Marcus had known this would happen, had known Volkov would come, had known Sarah would be here. Her voice came out hollow. My stepfather. Above them on the ridge they'd abandoned, nothing moved. The Wraith was patient. The Wraith was watching. And the Wraith knew things about Marcus Hale that Sarah had spent 13 years trying not to believe. She sat in the ravine, bleeding from small cuts, her spotter terrified beside her, and felt the entire foundation of her life begin to crack. Because if Marcus wasn't dead, then everything she knew was a lie. If Marcus wasn't dead, then the closed coffin had held someone else, or no one. If Marcus wasn't dead, then he'd let a 15-year-old girl cry at his grave for a man who'd never been buried. Sarah closed the notebook, checked her rifle, and made a choice. She would find the Wraith. She would learn the truth. And if that truth broke her, then it broke her. But she would not turn away. Marcus had taught her that too. Never turn away from the truth, even when the truth wears the face of someone you love. The sun rose over the Hindu Kush, turning the mountains gold and red. And deep in the ravine, Sarah Keane began to understand that this mission had never been about killing a sniper. It had been about finding a ghost. And now the ghost was finding her. The ravine offered cover but no comfort. Sarah pressed her back against sun-heated granite, feeling the rough stone through her tactical vest. Her breathing had steadied. Her heart rate had dropped back to operational levels, but her mind was a storm. Jessica Chen sat 3 feet away, checking her cracked glasses with shaking hands. Blood trickled from a cut above her eyebrow where flying rock had opened skin. She'd stopped asking questions, just stared at the radio clipped to Sarah's vest like it might come alive and bite. Sarah pulled out her compass, oriented herself, They were in a network of erosion channels that cut through the ridge like scars, good concealment, multiple routes, but also multiple approaches for anyone hunting them. She keyed the radio, switched to the command frequency. Vanguard Actual, this is Reaper 2, come in. Static, then Captain Brennan's voice, professional and distant. Reaper 2, send traffic. Actual, we are compromised. Enemy sniper has our position. Request immediate quick reaction force and air support. The pause lasted 3 seconds too long. Negative, Reaper 2. Sarah's jaw tightened. Her hands remained steady on the rifle, but something cold settled in her chest. Say again, Actual. Negative on QRF. Negative on air support. You will maintain mission posture. Wraith engagement is priority alpha. Adapt and overcome. Sir, we are pinned down with no line of sight, no backup, and an enemy who knows exactly where we are. You have your orders, Sergeant. Execute them. Brennan out. The radio went dead. Chen looked at Sarah with something between disbelief and terror. He just left us to die. Sarah checked her rifle. Magazine full. 14 rounds. She had 2 more magazines in her vest. 42 rounds total against an enemy who'd already proven he could hit them from 900 meters. No, she said quietly. He left us to do our job. Our job is suicide. Our job is whatever we make it. She pulled the notebook from her vest, flipped to page 63, an entry about being compromised, about turning disadvantage into advantage. When the enemy knows your position, you have 2 choices: run or reverse the trap. Running makes you predictable. Reversing the trap makes you dangerous. The amateur runs. The professional thinks. The master creates a situation where the enemy's knowledge becomes his weakness. Chen leaned closer, reading over Sarah's shoulder. What does that mean? It means if the Wraith knows where we are, we use that. Make him think we're doing one thing while we do another. How? Sarah studied the terrain. The ravine system branched in 3 directions: north toward higher ground, east toward the cave systems Chen had mentioned in the briefing, south back toward the valley floor. She pulled out a small mirror from her kit, angled it to catch sunlight, flashed it 3 times toward the ridge where the Wraith had fired from. Pause, 2 flashes. Morse code, why? Chen stared at her. You're asking him questions. I'm starting a conversation. That's insane. Maybe, but an enemy who talks is an enemy who's not shooting. And while he talks, we learn. For 10 seconds, nothing happened. Then the radio crackled. The Wraith's voice, calm, almost amused. Because you carry his rifle, and I want to know if you shoot like him. Sarah keyed the mic. Then let's find out. She moved to the edge of the ravine, exposed herself for exactly 1 second, long enough to scan the opposite ridge with her naked eye, long enough to register the unnatural shadow in the rocks, the rectangular darkness that nature doesn't make. She ducked back. Chen grabbed her arm. Are you insane? I saw him 940 meters northeast using a hide cloth. You saw him in 1 second. Muzzle shadow. The cloth creates a straight line. Nature doesn't do straight lines. A memory hit Sarah then, sudden and vivid. She was 14, standing with Marcus in the Montana wilderness. He was showing her a photograph of a forest, dense trees, thick underbrush. Where's the shooter? He'd asked. She'd stared at the image for 2 minutes, seen nothing. You're looking too hard. The eye sees patterns, not details. Look for what shouldn't be there. She'd looked again, and there it was, A tiny rectangular shadow, unnatural angle, the edge of a hide position. There. Good, now you know where not to look. Look everywhere else. Find the escape route. The memory faded. Sarah blinked. Chen was watching her. You went somewhere. Just remembering. Remembering what? How to think like him. Sarah pulled out the topographic map, studied the terrain around the Wraith's position. If he was in the primary hide Chen had seen, his escape route would be somewhere close, somewhere with cover, somewhere he could reach in under 10 seconds if he needed to move. She traced the contour lines with her finger, found it. There, that gully, 60 meters east of his position, that's his fallback. How do you know? Because it's what I'd use. She set up the M24. No direct line to the Wraith's hide. The angle was wrong, but she had a clear shot to the rock formation above his position. She aimed, calculated wind, elevation, the way the round would fragment on impact. She fired. The rifle bucked. The round crossed 900 meters in just over a second, hit the rock formation 6 feet above the Wraith's position. Granite exploded. Fragments showered down onto the hide. Sarah watched through the scope, her breathing controlled, pulse steady. Years of training keeping her body calm even as her mind raced with questions about Marcus. 5 seconds passed. Then movement. Thermal bloom on Chen's damaged imager. He's repositioning, Chen said. He's running to his fallback position. I made him predictable. Sarah shifted aim to the gully exit, waited. Her finger rested on the trigger. Light pressure, not enough to fire, just enough to feel the mechanism. 10 seconds. 15. A figure appeared, sprinting from the gully, moving fast for someone who had to be in his 60s. Sarah fired. The round hit 2 feet in front of the runner, deliberate, a message. The figure stopped, froze. The radio crackled. You missed. Sarah kept the rifle steady, crosshairs on the man's chest, her hands firm and unwavering on the weapon. No, I made you stop moving. Now we talk. Silence, then something that might have been a laugh. Marcus trained you better than I thought. Sarah's focus tightened. She could end this. One shot, center mass. The war would be lighter by one killer. But she didn't fire. Because she needed to know. You knew Marcus. Knew him? Little bird, I hunted him for 12 years. From Grozny to Kabul to the mountains where he thought he could hide. And when I finally cornered him in Chechnya, 1999, he put a bullet in my brother's head and vanished like smoke. I have been searching ever since. Sarah's world narrowed to the voice on the radio and the crosshairs on the man's chest. Her hand stayed rock solid on the rifle, but her chest felt tight. Then you've been chasing a ghost. Marcus died 13 years ago, heart attack. Is that what they told you? I was there, I saw the coffin. Did you see the body? The question hit like a fist. Sarah kept the rifle steady through pure discipline, even as something inside her went cold. Because the answer was no. Closed coffin, flag draped, no viewing. Her mother had said Marcus looked peaceful, but Sarah had never seen for herself. And when she tried to insist, tried to see him one last time, her mother had broken down crying and the funeral director had said it wasn't possible. The body had been prepared, sealed. It was better to remember him alive. No, Sarah said quietly. Because there was no body, the Wraith said. Marcus Hale is alive, Sarah, and you are going to help me find him. Chen grabbed Sarah's arm. He's lying, psyops, don't listen. But Sarah's mind was already racing. flashing through memories like shuffling cards. The closed coffin, the sealed service records, the way her mother had cried but never talked about Marcus after the funeral, the way all his gear, his guns, his notebooks except the one Sarah had found, had disappeared within 24 hours of his death. The way Army intelligence had visited her mother 6 times in the year after the funeral. She'd been 15, grieving, not asking the right questions. But she was asking them now. If he's alive, Sarah said into the radio, why would he hide from me? Because little bird Marcus Hale is not a hero. He is a war criminal, and if you knew what he did, you would hunt him too. You're lying. Am I? Then tell me why his service record is sealed, why Army intelligence visited your mother, why Captain Brennan knows his name. Sarah's focus narrowed. The rifle still aimed true, but her mind was elsewhere now. The Wraith continued. I will prove it to you. Check your satellite phone. I am sending coordinates. The sat phone on Sarah's vest buzzed. Incoming data. Chen grabbed her hand. Don't open it. Could be malware. Could compromise our position. Sarah opened it anyway. GPS coordinates, 8 kilometers south, plus a photograph. The photograph loaded slowly, pixel by pixel, first the background, a building with Cyrillic letters, then the foreground, a man. Gray hair, older, weathered face, but the eyes, the set of the shoulders, the way he stood with weight on his left leg favoring an old injury. Marcus Hale. Unmistakably. Date stamp in the corner, 14 months ago. Chen leaned over to look, her breath caught. Oh my God. Sarah stared at the phone. The world had gone very quiet. She could hear her own heartbeat, could hear the wind moving through the rocks, could hear nothing else. The rifle stayed level in her grip, muscle memory and discipline holding it steady even as her world tilted. The Wraith's voice came through the radio again, softer now, almost gentle. The coordinates are for a dead drop, 8 kilometers south of your position. Inside you will find proof of what Marcus did in Chechnya, proof of why he deserves to die. Go there, read the files, then decide. Why tell me this? Because I am old, Sarah, tired. I have hunted Marcus across 3 continents for 15 years and always he is one step ahead. But he has one weakness. You. If you go to those coordinates, he will come. He cannot help himself. Blood calls to blood. And when he shows himself, one of us will kill him. I do not care which. The radio went silent. Sarah sat in the ravine, holding the phone, looking at a photograph of a man who was supposed to be 13 years dead. Chen's voice was very small. What do we do? Sarah put the phone away, picked up the rifle, checked the chamber. We go to the coordinates. Sarah, this is obviously a trap. I know. Then why? Because if there's even a chance Marcus is alive, I need to know why he let me think he was dead for 13 years. And if it gets us killed, then we die knowing the truth. That's better than living with the lie. Chen stared at her for a long moment, then she picked up her pack. If we're doing this, we need to move smart. 8 clicks through Taliban country with no backup. We'll need to use the cave systems. Sarah nodded. Lead the way. They moved through darkness and stone for 6 hours. The cave system was ancient, carved by water over millennia. Chen navigated by GPS and memory, leading them through passages so narrow they had to turn sideways, through chambers so vast their lights couldn't find the ceiling. Twice they heard voices above, Taliban fighters moving on the surface. Sarah and Chen froze in the darkness, barely breathing until the voices faded. The cave smelled like minerals and time. Water dripped somewhere in the distance. Sarah's light swept across stone walls carved with graffiti, Russian, Arabic, English, soldiers from a dozen wars leaving their marks. She thought about Marcus, whether he'd walked these same tunnels, whether he'd carved his initials somewhere in the dark, whether he was walking them now. Chen stopped at a junction, 3 passages branching off into black. Which way? Sarah checked the GPS. The coordinates were 2 clicks southeast. She pointed to the rightmost passage. That one. You sure? No, but it's the best guess. They took the right passage. It sloped downward, twisting like intestines through the mountain. The air grew warmer, thinner. After 20 minutes, Chen stopped again. Do you hear that? Sarah listened. Water moving water. We're getting close to the valley floor. The dead drop should be near. Another 30 minutes of careful movement brought them to a cave mouth. Sunlight streamed in, painful after hours in darkness. Sarah approached carefully, scanning the terrain beyond. An abandoned Soviet bunker, half collapsed, rusted metal and crumbling concrete, exactly where the coordinates indicated. Sarah glassed the area with her scope. No movement, no heat signatures, no obvious threats. Chen, you stay here, cover the approach, I go in alone. Chen started to protest, but Sarah cut her off. That's an order, Corporal. Chen's jaw tightened, but she nodded. Sarah moved across open ground to the bunker, 50 meters of exposure, every second expecting a bullet. None came. She reached the entrance, darkness inside. She pulled her flashlight, entered. The bunker was a single room, concrete walls scarred with bullet impacts and graffiti. In the center, a metal box, padlocked. Sarah shot the lock. The sound echoed in the confined space. She opened the box. Inside, 3 items. A folder, marked Grozny Incident 1999 in faded typewriter text. A USB drive. A photograph. Sarah picked up the photograph first. Marcus, younger, maybe 40, in army fatigues, standing beside another man in Russian military uniform, both smiling, arms around each other's shoulders like brothers. She turned the photo over, handwriting on the back. Marcus and Yuri, Grozny, May 1999, before everything went wrong. Sarah opened the folder. Mission report, partially declassified, heavy redactions, but enough readable text to piece together the story. Marcus Hale, operating under Task Force Redacted, embedded with Russian FSB during Second Chechen War. Mission, Joint Counter-Insurgency Operations. August 17, 1999. Marcus's unit ambushed, 12 men killed, only Marcus survived. Russian investigation concluded ambush was coordinated by FSB officer Yuri Volkov, the man in the photograph. Marcus reported Yuri as a traitor. Russian command ignored the report, claimed insufficient evidence. 2 weeks later, Yuri Volkov found dead, single gunshot wound to the head, ruled suicide. But the final page, U.S. Army Intelligence Assessment, stamped classified. Hale executed Volkov without authorization. Witnesses claim Hale stated, "He killed my men. I don't need permission. Recommend immediate extraction and discharge. Hale is a liability." Sarah stood in the bunker, reading the words again. Her hands held the papers firmly, steadily, even as her mind reeled. She pulled out the USB drive, plugged it into her ruggedized tablet. A video file, date June 1999, size 47 megabytes. She pressed play. Helmet camera footage, grainy, night vision green, Marcus's voice, younger but recognizable. "Yuri, you piece of shit, I know it was you. Your own brother told me before he died." The camera shows Yuri Volkov tied to a chair in a basement, blood on his face, hands bound behind his back. Yuri's voice, thick with accent and fear. "Marcus, please, I can explain." "Explain to God." Gunshot. The video cuts to black. Sarah sat in the darkness of the bunker, the tablet glowing in her hands. Her grip on the device was firm and controlled, but something fundamental had shifted inside her chest. Marcus had taught her to shoot, had taught her patience and mathematics and how to read terrain, had taught her that fear was a weapon and that doubt was poison. But he'd never taught her what to do when the person who taught you everything was a murderer. She looked back at the folder, found a second document underneath the first. Newer paper, printed on a laser printer. Title: Task Force Shadowline Personnel Roster. A list of 40 names, all redacted, black bars hiding identities. Except one name, written by hand in the margin. Marcus Hale, KIA Stage 2011, now operational under alias, current location unknown, last confirmed sighting Kabul 2024. Sarah read that line 3 times. KIA staged. Death faked. Which meant the funeral had been theater. The closed coffin had held someone else or no one. Her mother had lied or been lied to. The army had erased him from official records and sent him back into the shadows. And for 13 years, while Sarah grew up, enlisted, deployed, Marcus had been alive somewhere, watching, never making contact. A memory surfaced, sharp and painful. She was 15, standing at the graveside, wind cutting through her black dress, her mother beside her crying into a handkerchief. The priest's voice, "We commit his body to the earth." Sarah had wanted to see him one more time, had begged. The funeral director had said no. Her mother had pulled her aside. "He loved you," her mother had whispered. "Remember that. No matter what you hear later, remember he loved you." "What does that mean?" Sarah had asked. "It means sometimes people leave to protect the ones they love." Sarah had thought her mother was talking about death. But she'd been talking about something else entirely. Sarah closed the folder, wrapped everything carefully, put it back in the box. She sat in the silence of the bunker and let herself feel the weight of it, the betrayal, the abandonment, the fact that the man who'd been her father in all the ways that mattered had chosen to let her grieve a lie. Then she stood up. Because sitting in grief accomplished nothing. And Marcus had taught her that too. She walked out of the bunker into afternoon light. Chen was waiting at the cave entrance, rifle ready. "What did you find?" Sarah handed her the folder. Chen read. Her expression went from confusion to shock to something like pity. "Jesus, Sarah, I'm sorry." "Don't be," he made his choice. "What do we do now?" Sarah looked at the mountains, at the endless ridges bleeding into sky. "We finish the mission. Wraith is still out there. We find him. We eliminate him. And if we find Marcus instead?" Sarah's silence was answer enough. They moved to high ground, found a position with clear sightlines over the bunker, set up an observation post. Sarah ranged the terrain, marked distances, calculated wind. Then they waited. This was the part Marcus had trained her for, the long stillness, the patience that separated professionals from amateurs, the ability to sit motionless for hours while your mind screamed at you to move. Sarah had always been good at waiting. 2 hours passed. The sun moved across the sky. Shadows lengthened. Chen shifted position, trying to find comfort on the rocks. How long do we stay? As long as it takes. That's not an answer. It's the only answer that matters. Another hour. The valley below turned gold in the late afternoon light. Then movement. 1,200 meters out. Thermal signature, single individual, moving carefully, tactical awareness in every step. Sarah tracked through the scope, her breathing even and controlled. Male 60s, gray hair, careful movement. He reached the bunker, paused at the entrance, seemed to be listening, then went inside. Sarah's crosshairs followed him through the doorway, lost visual. 4 minutes passed. The figure emerged, holding the folder Sarah had left behind. He looked directly at Sarah's position, as if he knew exactly where she was. Raised one hand, not surrender, recognition. Sarah's finger found the trigger, steady, certain. Chen's voice was barely a whisper. Sarah, is that him? Yes. Are you going to shoot? Sarah's world had narrowed to the scope, to the crosshairs centered on Marcus Hale's chest, 1,200 meters, wind 3 miles per hour from the west, slight upward angle. She'd made harder shots. One squeeze, one breath, one moment of commitment. And the man who'd let her cry at his grave would finally be dead for real. The radio crackled, the Wraith's voice. Now you see him. Now you choose. Shoot your father and prove you are a soldier, or lower the rifle and prove you are a daughter. Either way, I win. Sarah didn't move, didn't breathe. The rifle remained absolutely still in her grip. Marcus, through his own radio somehow on the same frequency, spoke. Sarah, don't shoot, it's a trap. Volkov has you surrounded. The world exploded. Behind Sarah, an RPG impact, rock and shrapnel flying, Chen screamed. Sarah spun. Their position had been hit. Chen was down, bleeding from her leg, shrapnel wounds, not fatal but bad. Gunfire erupted from 3 sides, Taliban fighters, 15 at least, pouring from the rocks like ants from a kicked hill. Sarah grabbed Chen, dragged her behind a boulder. Returned fire, dropped the first fighter with a headshot, cycled the bolt, dropped the second. But there were too many. Marcus's voice on the radio. Sarah, get out of there. Move east. There's a cave entrance 30 meters from your position. Go. Sarah fired again. Another Taliban down, reloaded. 8 rounds left in the magazine. 15 hostiles. The math didn't work. Chen grabbed her arm. We need to move, now. Sarah fired, bolt, fire, bolt, fire. 4 more rounds, 4 more targets down. The remaining fighters scattered, taking cover, regrouping. Sarah pulled Chen to her feet, half-carried her toward the cave entrance Marcus had indicated. Bullets snapped past, impacted rock, 1 round tore through Sarah's pack. They reached the cave, stumbled into darkness. Behind them the gunfire intensified, but different now, not aimed at them, aimed at something else. Sarah risked a look back. Marcus, on a ridge 400 meters away, firing into the Taliban position, covering their escape. Drawing fire to himself. Chen pulled Sarah deeper into the cave. We need to move, before they regroup. Sarah took one last look at Marcus. Their eyes met across the distance. He nodded once. Then he was gone, vanishing into the rocks the way ghosts do. They ran through the cave system, Chen limping badly, blood leaving a trail, Sarah supporting her weight. Behind them explosions, Grenades maybe, or RPGs. The Taliban were tearing the mountain apart looking for them. But the caves were a maze, and Sarah had memorized the route on the way in. 20 minutes of running brought them to a junction. Sarah stopped, listened. Silent, they'd lost the pursuit. Chen collapsed against the wall, breathing hard, clutching her wounded leg. Sarah examined the injury. Shrapnel had torn through the calf muscle, painful but not life-threatening if they could stop the infection. She pulled out her medical kit, cleaned the wound, applied antibiotic powder, bandaged it tight. Chen watched through half-closed eyes. "He saved us." Sarah didn't respond. Marcus, he could have let them kill us. Instead, he exposed himself, drew their fire. Why? Sarah finished the bandage. "I don't know." "Yes, you do." Sarah sat back. "Because that's what he does. He protects people, even when it costs him everything." "Is that why he faked his death? To protect you?" Sarah pulled out the notebook, opened it to a random page, Marcus's handwriting, instructions on wind reading and bullet drop. "I don't know," she said quietly. "Maybe. Or maybe he just needed an excuse to disappear." The sat phone buzzed, text message, unknown number. Sarah opened it. "Cave System 2 clicks north. Come alone, we end this tonight, M." Chen read over her shoulder. "It's a trap." "I know." "Then why go?" "Because he's right. This ends tonight, one way or another." Sarah helped Chen to a concealed position, left her with the sat phone and a sidearm. "If I'm not back in 2 hours, call for extraction. Don't wait for me." "Sarah." "That's an order." Sarah picked up the M24, checked the chamber, 3 magazines left, 42 rounds. "Enough." She walked into the darkness. The cave system led north, deeper into the mountain. Sarah navigated by compass and memory. The passages grew narrower, the air thinner. After 30 minutes, she saw light ahead. Not sunlight, artificial light, LED glow. She approached carefully, rifle ready. The passage opened into a large chamber, natural cathedral, stalactites hanging like frozen tears, and in the center a battery-powered lantern. Marcus Hale stood beside it, unarmed, hands visible. He looked older than in the photograph, more gray, more lines around the eyes, but still Marcus, still the man who taught her to shoot when she was 10 years old. "Hello, kid." Sarah raised the rifle, aimed at his chest, steady, unwavering. "Give me one reason not to shoot." "Because if you do, you'll never know the truth about why I left." "I know enough. You killed a man in cold blood, then you faked your death and abandoned me." "I faked my death to save you. Volkov would have killed you to get to me. I had no choice." "There's always a choice." "Not when the choice is your life or my revenge." Behind Sarah, the sound of boots on stone, multiple contacts. She spun. Dmitry Volkov stood in the passage, flanked by 4 fighters, all armed, all aiming at Sarah. Volkov was older than his voice suggested, 70 at least, gray beard, cold eyes, holding a Dragunov like it was part of his body. He smiled. Beautiful father and daughter, together at last, and now both will die together. Sarah was trapped, Marcus behind her, Volkov in front, no cover, no escape. The M24 was still aimed at Marcus's chest, but that didn't matter now. Volkov gestured with the Dragunov. "Lower your weapon, Sarah. This ends peacefully or it ends bloody. Your choice." Sarah didn't move. The rifle stayed level. Marcus's voice, calm, like he was teaching her to shoot again. Sarah, on 3, drop and roll left. I'll go right, trust me. How do I know you won't run? Because I didn't spend 13 years protecting you just to leave you now. Volkov laughed. Touching but futile. You are surrounded, outnumbered, and I have waited too long for this moment to let sentiment interfere. The cave suddenly filled with light, blinding white, phosphorus. Flashbang. Sarah's training took over, eyes closed, mouth open, hands protecting ears. The explosion was muffled by her preparation, but Volkov's men weren't ready. They staggered, blind and deafened. From the passage behind Volkov, soldiers poured in. American, full kit, night vision, weapons up. Leading them, Captain Owen Brennan. His voice cut through the chaos. Hands, show me hands, now. Volkov's fighters dropped their weapons, raised their arms. Volkov himself turned slowly, still smiling. Right on time, Captain. Brennan's team secured the fighters, zip-tied them, pushed them against the wall. Then Brennan walked past Volkov. Walked to Marcus. Aimed his rifle at Marcus's chest. Marcus Hale, you're under arrest for desertion, murder, and treason. Sarah's world tilted. What the hell, Brennan? Stand down, Sergeant. This doesn't concern you. Marcus's voice was resigned, almost relieved. Sarah, it's okay. I knew this was coming. What are you talking about? Brennan kept his rifle steady. Operation Ghost Protocol, joint CIA and Army intelligence. We've been hunting your stepfather for 6 years. We used you as bait, and it worked. Sarah felt the words like physical blows. Her rifle stayed aimed, but her focus had shifted entirely. You used me. You were the only leverage we had. Hale's been untouchable for years, off-grid, ghost protocols, but we knew he'd surface if his daughter was in danger. We were right. And Volkov. Brennan glanced at the old Russian. Asset, he's been working with us for 18 months, feeding Hale false intelligence, leading him here. Volkov shrugged. Revenge is expensive. CIA pays better. Marcus tried to speak. Sarah, listen. Brennan cut him off. Shut it, Hale. You'll have plenty of time to talk at Leavenworth. He turned to Sarah. Your mission was always to draw him out. You did your job. Well done. Now stand down. Sarah didn't lower her rifle. She shifted aim. To Brennan. Her hands perfectly controlled, perfectly steady. No. That's an order, Sergeant. Sarah's voice was ice. Screw your order. You lied to me, used me, put Chen in danger. For what? To arrest a man who's been doing the work you're too scared to authorize. You don't understand what he's done. I read the file. He killed a traitor who got 12 Americans killed, and your response was to bury him. Marcus stepped forward. Sarah, don't do this. They'll court-martial you. I don't care. Another memory. Sarah was 12, sitting at the dinner table in the Montana cabin, Marcus across from her cleaning his rifle. Why did you join the army? She'd asked. To protect people who can't protect themselves. Even if it means breaking rules. Marcus had looked at her for a long time before answering. Rules are made by people who have never had to choose between right and legal. Sometimes they're the same thing. Sometimes they're not. When they're not, you have to decide what you can live with. The memory faded. Sarah kept the rifle on Brennan, absolutely still, absolutely certain. I'm making a choice, right over legal. Before Brennan could respond, Volkov moved. Fast for a man his age, pulled a hidden pistol from his boot, aimed at Marcus. "I am tired of waiting." He fired. Sarah was faster. Her round hit Volkov's pistol, shattered it in his hand. Perfect shot. Volkov screamed, clutched his mangled fingers. Sarah cycled the bolt, aimed at Brennan's men. Anyone else? The operators looked at each other, at Brennan, uncertain. Brennan's face had gone pale. "Reeves, stand down or I will have you arrested for assaulting an officer." Marcus's voice cut through. "Captain, check your sat phone." Brennan hesitated, pulled out his phone. "Incoming message, video file." He played it. Sarah couldn't see the screen, but she saw Brennan's expression change. Shock, then fear. The audio was faint but clear enough. A general's voice, name obscured. "Hale knows where the black sites are. He has proof of our rendition programs. If he talks, 40 operators go to Leavenworth and we lose our entire off-books capability. Hale cannot be arrested. He must be killed. Make it look like combat. Understand?" Brennan's voice on the recording. "Yes, sir." The video ended. Brennan stood frozen. Marcus's smile was cold. "I recorded everything, Owen. Every call, every order, every lie. And if anything happens to me, it goes public. You want to arrest me? Fine, but you'll burn with me. Every operator in Shadowline, every black site, every ghost mission, all of it public. Think about that." Silence filled the cave. Brennan lowered his weapon. "You son of a bitch. I learned from the best." Brennan's voice was quiet, defeated. "Stand down, mission's over." The operators lowered their rifles. Volkov, bleeding from his ruined hand, laughed bitterly. "You are letting him go." Brennan didn't look at him. "Bag him, he's going to a black site. No trial, no lawyers, just a cell." Volkov's eyes went wide. "You cannot, I have immunity. We had a deal." "Deal's chain." Two operators grabbed Volkov, dragged him toward the exit. His screaming echoed through the cave until distance swallowed it. Brennan and his team filed out. Before Brennan left, he stopped beside Marcus. 24 hours, then I don't care what recordings you have. I'm coming for you. I'll be gone in 12. Brennan looked at Sarah. "You're done, Reeves, court-martial, dishonorable discharge, everything you've worked for gone." He walked away, leaving Sarah and Marcus alone in the cave. The lantern flickered. Marcus picked it up, set it on a rock. Long silence. Sarah lowered the rifle, but didn't set it down. "Why didn't you contact me in 13 years? "Because every time I got close, someone died. Volkov, CIA, I couldn't risk it." "So you just watch from a distance?" "Every deployment, every mission, I knew where you were, what you were doing." "That's not love, that's surveillance." "It's the only kind of love I know how to give." Sarah's anger cracked. Tears came. She didn't wipe them away. "I needed you after Mom died, after everything. I needed you and you were just gone." Marcus took a step closer, stopped when Sarah tensed. "I know and I'm sorry, but if I'd stayed, you'd be dead, and I couldn't live with that. So you made me live with thinking you were dead instead." "Yes, because your pain was temporary. Your death would be permanent." Sarah looked at him, at the man who'd taught her everything, who'd abandoned her to save her. "What happens now?" "Now I disappear, again, for real this time." "And me?" You go back, finish your service, live your life, forget about me. I can't. You have to. He pulled a USB drive from his pocket, held it out. Everything I know, every mission, every target, every lesson, it's yours now. Use it better than I did. Sarah took the drive. Their fingers touched briefly. Marcus turned to leave. Sarah's voice stopped him. Marcus. He paused, didn't turn around. The notebook, page 3, fire and vanish. You wrote that for me, didn't you? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. I wrote everything for you, kid. I just didn't know if you'd ever read it. He walked into the darkness. His footsteps faded. Sarah stood alone in the cave with a rifle and a USB drive, and 13 years of grief finally finding its release. She cried in the darkness of the mountain, cried for the father she'd lost twice, cried for the lies and the truths and the impossible choices. Then she wiped her face, picked up the rifle, and walked back toward Chen. Because the mission wasn't over. The war was still happening. And soldiers don't get to stop just because their world falls apart. They keep moving. Marcus had taught her that too. 6 months later, the war looked different from 30,000 feet. Sarah Keane sat in the cargo bay of a C-130 Hercules, surrounded by soldiers rotating home. Young faces, mostly. Kids who'd seen too much too fast. They slept against their packs or stared at nothing, the 1,000-yard stare that came from places phones and letters couldn't reach. Sarah stared out the small porthole window at Afghanistan shrinking below, mountains giving way to desert, desert giving way to nothing. Her duffel bag sat between her boots, everything she owned that mattered. The M24 was in a hard case, checked through military transport. The notebook was in her cargo pocket, wrapped in plastic, close to her heart. The USB drive Marcus had given her was on a chain around her neck. She hadn't looked at it yet, wasn't sure she ever would. Jessica Chen sat across the bay, legs still bandaged but healing. She'd been medevaced 2 days after the cave. Infection had set in despite Sarah's field treatment. She'd spent 3 weeks in a hospital in Germany before being cleared to fly home. She caught Sarah's eye, nodded once. Sarah nodded back. They hadn't talked about what happened in the mountains. There was nothing to say that wouldn't be recorded, filed, and used against them later. Because Brennan had been right about one thing. Sarah's career was over. The investigation had taken 4 months. Formal inquiry into her conduct during Operation Ghost Protocol, disobeying direct orders, threatening a superior officer, compromising a classified mission. The charges were technical, bureaucratic, but the intent was clear. The Army wanted her gone. Sarah had expected court-martial, expected Leavenworth. Instead, she'd gotten something worse. General discharge, under honorable conditions, which sounded good until you understood what it meant. No benefits, no pension, no veteran status that meant anything. A handshake and a thank you for your service, and don't let the door hit you. The Army's way of saying we can't prove you did anything wrong, but we don't want you here anymore. Sarah had signed the papers without reading them, packed her gear, said goodbye to no one. Chen had tried to visit before Sarah left Bagram. Sarah had refused the meeting. Some goodbyes were better left unsaid. The C-130's engines changed pitch, beginning descent into Ramstein Air Base, Germany, first stop on the long journey back to the world. Sarah closed her eyes, tried to sleep. Couldn't. Her mind kept returning to the cave, to Marcus's face in the lamplight, to the weight of 13 years of lies finally named. She'd spent the past 6 months trying to reconcile the man who'd taught her to shoot with the man who'd executed someone in a basement. Trying to reconcile the stepfather who'd read her bedtime stories with the ghost operator who'd faked his death and watched from the shadows. The math didn't work. But maybe that was the point. Maybe people weren't equations. Maybe they were just collections of choices, good and bad, stacked up until the stack became a life. And maybe the only thing you could do was decide which choices you'd make yourself. The plane landed. Soldiers filed out into German rain. Sarah shouldered her duffel, followed the crowd. In the terminal, Chen was waiting. She'd taken a different flight out of Bagram. Should have been 3 days ahead of Sarah. But here she was, leaning on a cane, watching the arrival gate with those sharp eyes behind repaired glasses. Sarah stopped. Thought about walking past, about pretending not to see. But Chen had earned better than that. Sarah walked over. "Corporal." Chen smiled, small and sad. "It's just Chen now. They medically retired me. Leg won't heal right, can't pass the PT test." Sarah didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing. Chen shifted her weight on the cane. "I've been waiting 2 days. Wasn't sure which flight you'd be on." "Why wait?" "Because you saved my life, twice, and I never got to say thank you." "You don't owe me anything." "Maybe not, but I'm saying it anyway, thank you." Sarah nodded. They stood in awkward silence while soldiers and families moved around them. Reunions and farewells in a language that wasn't quite home yet. Chen pulled an envelope from her jacket. "This came for you, through official channels, addressed to me, but it's for you." She held it out. Sarah took it, standard military envelope, no return address, her name typed on the front. She opened it. Inside a single sheet of paper, typed message. "Sarah, there's a job if you want it, not military, not official, but important. The kind of work that needs doing when the official channels fail. You know how to find me if you're interested. If not, live well. You've earned it. M." Sarah read it twice, folded it, put it in her pocket. Jen watched her face. "What is it?" "Nothing, just someone saying goodbye." "Is it him?" Sarah didn't answer. Jen didn't push. Instead, she pulled out a business card, handed it to Sarah. "I'm going back to California. Got a job with a defense contractor. Tech work. Analysis. It's not the field, but it's something. If you ever need anything, call." Sarah took the card, read it. Patricia Chen, Senior Analyst, Northgate Solutions. "You go by Patricia now." Trying to, Jessica feels like someone else, someone younger, someone who didn't know what mountains could take from you. Sarah understood that. She pocketed the card. "Take care, Chen." "You too, Sergeant." Sarah walked away, didn't look back. Behind her, Chen's voice called out one more time. "He was wrong, you know, your stepfather, about one thing." Sarah stopped, turned. "What's that?" "He said you'd forget about him. Move on, live your life." "And?" Chen smiled. "You won't. People like you don't forget. You just learn to carry it better." Sarah held Chen's gaze for a moment. Then kept walking. 3 flights and 40 hours later, Sarah landed in Bozeman, Montana. Home, or what used to be home. She rented a car, drove 2 hours into the mountains, took roads that turned from pavement to gravel to dirt, passed through towns that were more idea than place, gas station, post office, bar, nothing else. The cabin sat where it had always sat, 40 acres of timber and meadow, a creek running through the property, mountains in every direction. Sarah's mother had left it to her in the will. Sarah hadn't been back since the funeral 5 years ago. She parked the rental car, sat for a minute looking at the cabin. It was smaller than she remembered, wood siding weathered gray, porch sagging, windows dark. But it was still standing. Sarah got out, unlocked the door with a key she'd kept on her keychain through 3 deployments. Inside smelled like dust and time, furniture covered in sheets, floor littered with pine needles blown through cracks. She walked through the rooms, living room, kitchen, 2 bedrooms. Everything exactly as she remembered, frozen in amber. She dropped her duffel in the bedroom that had been hers, single bed, dresser, window overlooking the creek. On the dresser, a photograph in a frame, Sarah at 13, Marcus beside her, both holding rifles, both smiling, a deer hung in the background, her first solo kill. She picked up the frame, studied Marcus's face, looking for signs she'd missed, evidence of the man he'd become. Found nothing but a stepfather proud of his daughter. She set the frame down, sat down on the mattress that smelled like memories. And for the first time in 6 months, Sarah Keane let herself stop moving. The days fell into a rhythm that was almost peace. Sarah woke with the sun, ran the property line, 5 miles through timber and up ridges that tested lungs and legs. Came back, ate, cleaned. Spent afternoons on the porch with the notebook, reading, learning, finding entries she'd missed before. Marcus had written about more than shooting. He'd written about loneliness, about the cost of the work, about knowing you'd done necessary things that good people would call evil. About watching from a distance as the people you loved lived their lives without you. Some entries were dated, most weren't. One caught Sarah's attention, near the back, different ink, newer. The hardest missions aren't the ones where you pull the trigger. They're the ones where you don't, where you watch the target walk away because killing them would compromise something bigger, would burn an asset, would expose an operation. You watch them go, knowing they'll kill again, knowing you could stop it with one shot. But you don't. Because the mission is bigger than your conscience. That's when you know you've gone too far, when the mission matters more than the person you used to be. That's when you know it's time to get out. But getting out isn't an option, not when you know what you know, not when you've done what you've done. So you keep going, you keep shooting, you keep compromising. Until one day you look in the mirror and don't recognize the face looking back. Sarah read that entry 3 times. Wondered when Marcus had written it. Wondered if he'd been thinking about her when he did. On the 4th day, Sarah walked to the gun safe in the back of the closet. Her mother had changed the combination after Marcus's death. Sarah had found the new combination in the will, 6 numbers, her birthday backwards. She opened the safe. Inside, the weapons Marcus had left behind, a Remington 700, a 1911 pistol, boxes of ammunition. And underneath everything, a second notebook. Smaller than the first, different handwriting, her mother's. Sarah pulled it out, sat on the floor, opened to the first page. Sarah, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you have questions I never answered while I was alive. I'm sorry for that, but some truths are harder to speak than write, so here it is. Marcus Hale was not your biological father, you know that. Your real father died before you were born, drunk driver, wrong place, wrong time. I met Marcus when you were 3. He was just out of the army, medically retired, they said, but I knew better. He had that look, The one soldiers get when they've seen too much. We married when you were 4. He adopted you when you were 5. He loved you more than anything in this world, more than me, more than his work, more than his own life. When you were 10, men came to the house, government men. They said Marcus had skills the country needed, asked him to come back, unofficial work, the kind that doesn't exist on paper. He said no, said he was done, said he had a family now. They told him he didn't have a choice, reminded him of things he'd done, things that could put him in prison if they wanted. So he went back. For 5 years he'd disappear for weeks at a time, come back different, quieter, harder. I watched him die by inches. When you were 15, he came home and said he had to leave for good. Said people were hunting him, people who'd use you and me to get to him. He said the only way to keep us safe was to die. I helped him stage it, helped him fake the death certificate, helped him disappear. And then I lied to you for 13 years. I'm sorry, Sarah. I know you needed him, but he needed to know you were safe more than you needed to have him around. That's what love looks like sometimes. Sacrifice that feels like abandonment. He never stopped watching over you, every birthday, every deployment he knew. And if you're reading this, it means you found him, or he's found you. Whatever happens next, know this. You are the best thing either of us ever did. And whatever choices you make, we're proud of you. Live well, baby girl. Mom. Sarah sat on the closet floor holding her mother's notebook until the light faded and the cabin filled with darkness. Then she stood, walked to the porch, sat in the chair Marcus used to sit in, the one that faced the mountains, pulled out the USB drive. For 6 months she'd carried it without looking, afraid of what she'd find. But fear was poison. Marcus had taught her that. She went inside, found an old laptop in the closet, charged it, booted it up. Plugged in the drive. 15 files, video, audio, documents. She opened the first video. Marcus appeared on screen, sitting in a room she didn't recognize, looking directly at the camera. Sarah, if you're watching this, you know I'm alive. You know I lied, and you probably hate me for it. I don't blame you. But before you decide what to do with this information, you need to understand what I've been doing for the past 13 years. The unit I work for doesn't have a name you'd recognize. We're not CIA, not military. We're what happens when the official channels fail, when a target is too protected, too connected, when the law can't touch them but someone needs to. We're the ones who do what's necessary. I've killed 47 people since I faked my death. War criminals, human traffickers, terrorists that 3-letter agencies couldn't prosecute. Every single one deserved it. But that doesn't make it legal. That doesn't make it right. It just makes it necessary. I'm telling you this because you have a choice to make. The files on this drive contain everything, every target, every mission, every piece of evidence I've collected. You can take it to the authorities, burn the whole program, put me and 40 other operators in prison. Or you can delete it, walk away, live your life and pretend you never knew. Or there's a third option. You can join us. Use what I taught you, use the skills you've earned, do the work that needs doing when the law fails. It's not a good life, Sarah. It's lonely, it's hard. It eats you from the inside. But it's important. I won't pressure you, I won't contact you. The choice is yours. Just know that whatever you choose, I'm proud of you. You're the best thing I ever did. Fire and vanish, kid. The video ended. Sarah sat in the dark cabin with the laptop glowing and made a decision. She opened the second file. Target profile, name, photograph, crimes documented, evidence attached. She read through it, then the third file, the fourth. By dawn, she'd read them all. 47 kills, 47 people who'd escaped justice through money or power or connections. 47 necessary evils. She closed the laptop, walked outside into morning light. The mountains were sharp against the sky. The creek ran clear and cold. Somewhere in the timber an elk bugled. Sarah thought about the choices in front of her. Burn the program. Get justice for the people Marcus had killed without trial. Walk away. Let it all fade into the shadows where it belonged. Or pick up the rifle and finish what he'd started. She thought about the men and women in those files, the ones Marcus had killed, the crimes they'd committed. Thought about the ones still out there, the ones who'd escaped, who were hurting people right now while lawyers and politicians debated jurisdiction. Thought about what Marcus had said. Sometimes the law fails. Sometimes someone needs to do what's necessary. She thought about her mother's words. Whatever choices you make, we're proud of you. And she thought about something Chen had said in the airport. People like you don't forget. You just learn to carry it better. Sarah went inside, pulled out the notebook, opened to the last page Marcus had written. Rule number 23. The hardest shot is the one you don't take. The hardest choice is the one that changes who you are. But sometimes growth requires change. Sometimes justice requires action. And sometimes the only way to honor what you've been taught is to use it. Trust yourself. Trust your training. Trust that you'll know the right moment when it comes. And when it does, don't hesitate. Fire and vanish. Sarah read those words until they stopped being Marcus's voice and became her own. Then she made her choice. She took the laptop outside, smashed it with a rock, burned the pieces in a fire pit, watched the USB drive melt in the flames. When the fire died, she went inside and packed. The M24, the notebook, enough clothes for a week. Left everything else behind. Locked the cabin, got in the rental car. Drove back to Bozeman. Returned the car, bought a ticket to Seattle. In Seattle, she bought a burner phone, called a number from memory. A number Marcus had made her memorize when she was 12 in case of emergency. The phone rang 3 times. A man's voice answered, not Marcus. Yes. My name is Sarah Keane. I'm looking for work. What kind of work? The kind that needs doing when official channels fail. Silence then. How did you get this number? From someone who taught me to shoot. More silence. Stand by. The line clicked, hold music. Sarah waited. 3 minutes passed. The line clicked again, different voice, older, authority in every syllable. Ms. Keane, we've been expecting your call. Your stepfather spoke highly of your skills. Is he alive? That's not information I can share. What I can share is this. We have an opening. The work is difficult, dangerous, and completely off the books. You'll have no official standing, no legal protections. If you're caught, we disavow. If you're killed, there's no flag on the coffin. I understand. Do you? Because walking through this door means walking away from everything else. No relationships, no home, no life outside the work. It's a one-way trip. Sarah thought about the cabin in the mountains, about the photograph on the dresser, about the girl she'd been and the woman she'd become. Thought about Marcus, watching from the shadows for 13 years. Thought about necessary evils and the space between right and legal. "I understand," she said again. The voice on the phone was quiet for a moment. Then, "We'll send you coordinates. Be there in 72 hours. Come alone. Bring your rifle." The line went dead. Sarah stood in a Seattle coffee shop with a phone in her hand and a choice made. She thought about calling Chen, saying goodbye properly. Decided against it. Some doors you close quietly. She bought a laptop, opened an email account, sent Chen one message. "Thank you for everything. Live well, S." Deleted the account. Threw the laptop in a dumpster. Walked to a sporting goods store, bought supplies, ammunition, field gear. Checked into a motel, waited. 72 hours later, the burner phone buzzed. Text message, GPS coordinates, northern Idaho, middle of nowhere. Sarah loaded the M24 into a new hard case, packed her gear. Took a bus to Coeur d'Alene, rented a car, drove into the mountains. The coordinates led to a dirt road. The dirt road led to a gate. The gate led to a compound hidden in timber. No signs, no markings, just buildings and purpose. A woman met her at the gate, 50s, hard eyes, operator written in every line of her body. "Keane." "Yes." "Follow me." The compound was sparse. Barracks, armory, shooting range carved into a hillside, maybe 20 people visible, all moving with the same purposeful economy. The woman led Sarah to a small office, gestured to a chair. Sarah sat. The woman remained standing. "You've read the files, you know what we do." "Yes." "You understand the costs." "Yes." "Then I have one question, why?" Sarah thought about that, about Marcus, about the notebook, about choices and consequences and the space between. Because someone has to. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. The woman studied her, then nodded. "Good enough, you start training tomorrow. Weapons, tactics, operational security. If you pass, you get your first assignment in 6 months. And if I don't pass, you go home, and you never speak about this place or the people in it." Understood. The woman turned to leave, stopped at the door. "One more thing, your stepfather left something for you, in case you showed up." She pulled an envelope from her pocket, handed it to Sarah. Sarah opened it. Inside, a photograph, Marcus and Sarah on the porch of the Montana cabin. She was maybe 12, both holding rifles, both smiling. On the back, Marcus's handwriting. "Fire and vanish, kid, make me proud." Sarah stared at the photograph for a long time. When she looked up, the woman was gone. Sarah walked to the barracks, found an empty bunk, set down her gear. Opened the notebook, read page 1 again. Rule number 1. A sniper's greatest weapon isn't the rifle, it's patience. She thought about that. About patience, about waiting, about the long game. About Marcus, watching from the shadows for 13 years. About herself, about to do the same. She closed the notebook. Lay back on the bunk. Stared at the ceiling. And thought about a girl in Montana who'd learned to shoot from a ghost. About a woman in Afghanistan who'd learned the truth costs more than lies. About the choice between right and legal when they weren't the same thing. About fire and vanish and the space between. Tomorrow she'd start training. Tomorrow, she'd become someone new. But tonight she was still Sarah Keane, daughter of Marcus Hale, student of necessary evils, inheritor of a legacy written in shadow and lead. She thought about all the things she'd lost, her career, her innocence, her certainty about right and wrong. And she thought about what she'd gained. Truth, purpose, a path forward when all the old paths had closed. It wasn't the life she'd planned, but it was the life she'd chosen. And in the end, maybe that was enough. 6 months later, Sarah Keane stood on a rooftop in Bogotá, Colombia. Below her, a city of 8 million people moving through their lives, traffic and commerce, and all the ordinary chaos of civilization. In her scope, a man, target, war criminal, escaped justice through bribes and threats and a legal system too broken to hold him. 43 confirmed kills, women and children, villages burned, evidence destroyed. 6 governments had tried to prosecute. 6 times he'd walked free. Sarah had been tracking him for 3 weeks, learning his patterns, his security, his routines. Tonight he was exposed, 30 seconds between his car and the restaurant entrance. 1,100 meters, wind 4 miles per hour from the east, minimal, temperature 68 degrees, barometric pressure stable. An easy shot by her standards. Sarah settled into position, controlled her breathing, let her heart rate drop. In her ear, the voice of her handler, the same woman who'd met her at the gate. You have green light, target is confirmed, execute at your discretion. Sarah's finger found the trigger. She thought about Marcus, about the choices he'd made, the prices he'd paid. Thought about the notebook, about all the lessons written in that cramped handwriting. Thought about the difference between right and legal and necessary. The target emerged from his car, surrounded by bodyguards, moving fast. Sarah tracked him, smooth, mechanical. Waited for the gap in coverage. Found it. 3 seconds of exposure. She took 2 seconds to be sure. Fired on the 3rd. The target dropped clean, instant. The bodyguards scattered, chaos in the street. Sarah was already moving, breaking down the rifle, packing gear. 90 seconds later, she was in the stairwell. 3 minutes later, she was on the street, tourist clothes, camera around her neck, just another traveler. She walked 6 blocks, got in a car, drove to a safe house. Burned the clothes, cleaned the rifle, logged the mission. Sent the confirmation code. Sat in the quiet room and felt nothing. No guilt, no pride, no sense of victory or loss. Just the quiet certainty of work completed. She opened the notebook, added an entry of her own. Mission 11, Bogotá, target confirmed eliminated, 1,100 meters, single shot, clean. Lessons learned, trust the preparation, trust the training, trust the moment. She closed the notebook. Thought about calling Chin, let her know she was alive. Decided against it. Chin had her life, Sarah had hers. Some distances couldn't be bridged by phone calls. She lay back on the bed, stared at the ceiling. Thought about the cabin in Montana, empty now, waiting. Thought about Marcus, somewhere in the world, doing the same work under a different name. Wondered if their paths would cross. Wondered what she'd say if they did. Decided it didn't matter. The work was what mattered, the mission, the necessity. Everything else was just noise. She closed her eyes. Slept the dreamless sleep of soldiers and ghosts. And in the morning, she woke to new coordinates. New target. New necessity. The cycle continuing. Fire and vanish. Again and again. Until one day, maybe, the world wouldn't need ghosts anymore. But until that day came, Sarah Keane would be ready. Rifle clean, skills sharp, conscience clear. Walking the path Marcus had walked. Carrying the legacy he'd left. Making her own choices in the space between right and legal and necessary. A ghost's daughter. A necessary evil. A weapon pointed at the darkness. Fire and vanish. The only rule that mattered. The only truth worth knowing. And somewhere in the world, in a place with no name, Marcus Hale received a mission report. Read the confirmation code. Saw his daughter's signature. And smiled. Because she'd chosen. Not his choice, not the Army's choice. Her own. And that made all the difference. He closed the file. Picked up his own rifle. Walked toward his own mission. Father and daughter. Both ghosts now. Both necessary. Both free. In the only way that people like them could ever be free. Through the work. Through the sacrifice. Through the long, quiet hours of patience and precision and purpose. Fire and vanish. The legacy past. The circle complete. The end. And the beginning.